Hello and welcome back to Ask a CFO, the podcast series where I'm shining a light on the different paths taken to become Chief Financial Officer. I'm Sophie Jackson, and it is my real pleasure today to be joined by EeLain Ong, CFO at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre. Many of you will know that venue. It's just opposite the Houses of Parliament and is really an iconic place for conferences and gatherings in the UK. So EeLain is a qualified chartered accountant with 29 years of finance experience across various sectors, including 7 years experience as Chief Financial Officer in different companies. It was really a pleasure to catch up with EeLain and to learn more about her career journey and development, where she draws inspiration from, and to get some advice from her for those of you aspiring to become a future CFO yourselves. Hi, EeLain. Thank you so much for being part of today. So first of all, I'd love to know a little bit about what we call your origin story. So where did you grow up? Where are you from? Where did you first think, I'm good at finance, or this might be something I'd like to do? Tell me, where does it all start for you?
Right. I think it all started for me when I was doing my A-levels and I didn't know whether to go down the STEM route or something else. And my dad, who's an engineer, basically advised me that if I were to follow in his footsteps in engineering, it's very male-dominated. So he advised me to do a desk job. And he went, since I'm good at STEM subjects, I'm good at math, why don't I just do finance? So I thought, all right, okay, fine. But looking back over the past 30 years, I think he advised me correctly, because I don't think I would want to be an engineer today.
Yeah.
Particularly, I wanted to be a chemical engineer. So you would have to be out in the oil rigs in the middle of the North Sea or somewhere. It's quite rough, it's not really an easy desk job like finance.
Yeah. But what was it that drew you to the idea of engineering in the first place?
I was good at chemistry. I was good at physics, good in math. I just thought it's the natural thing to do because my dad was an engineer, but he really put me on the right path.
Amazing. And was your dad a constant source of inspiration for you and guidance as you were growing up?
Yeah, my dad and my mum too. So my mum was a nurse, and clearly I wanted to do medicine as well. And then she put me off it. She went, the hours are crazy and you don't have enough sleep. And she said, no, it's a terrible profession. So both parents put me off their professions and they guided me down the finance route.
Amazing. And so what did you go and study? What kind of set you off on the path? And what were your early experiences getting your first jobs like?
Right. So I did accounting at university. And then in my final year, sort of the Christmas before the July graduation, I got a conditional offer to train with a medium-sized firm of accountants. So I trained with them after the summer holidays. So we started in September 95. So yeah, 29 years ago.
Wow. So
I embarked on a 7-year career with the accounting firm. So I started off with Meza, then I moved on to Deloitte. Obviously, the aim is always to go and work for the Big Four. And while I was there for 7 years as an auditor, most of my clients were in the insurance industry. So I fell into that and I specialized in that. So that was what I was doing. But then when I was at Deloitte, I also had the opportunity to do a couple of mergers and acquisitions type exciting work. So I did the flotation of Michael Page, the recruitment company. I also did the flotation of Colin Stewart, a stockbroker. And I also did the acquisition of the motorcare acquisition of a sort of claims handling company in Holland. So I did quite a lot of exciting work there as well, besides the boring audit work in insurance. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me, what did that teach you then? Because that sounds, you're young to be working on these kind of projects at that stage, right?
Yes. Young and very energetic. So I could do with very little sleep. It's not for me today, but yeah.
Were there moments along that path where you kind of got the bug, if you like? Like, when did you realize this is really something that I'm good at and I want to take this to wherever I can get it to?
So because I studied accounting, while I was in the Big Four, I did my accountancy training and I qualified within 2 years. I qualified very quickly. People normally take 3 years, but I did it all very quickly.
Amazing.
Yeah, and because I specialized in insurance, when I left the profession, the Big Four, after 7 years there, I had various roles in finance within insurance. So I sort of climbed the steps. I became like a head of finance, and then I became financial controller. And then finally I became CFO/finance director. And I've been this probably about 6-7 years now in this leadership position.
Fantastic. And then let's just kind of take a step back then, because if we think for people listening who aspire to get to where you are now, do you think having that big four, or sometimes they're called the big six now, aren't they? The big four experience was critical for you? And would you recommend going to the largest firms possible when people are starting out?
Yes, I would highly recommend the big four. Even if you don't get there, take it as a two-step approach. Join a smaller firm and then eventually apply for a job at the big four. I tell you why, it's because they are very methodical.
Yeah.
They set up a certain structure for you to follow. As an accountant or an auditor, an auditor is someone who just is like a policeman. They just police over what the accountants do. So essentially, it's the same skill set. It's just that one sits on this side of the fence and one sits on the other side of the fence. So it is very methodical and structured, and it guides your thinking and even your method and your processes. So when you problem solve, you know how to do it in a very structured step-by-step manner. You go through elimination of what's the root cause of a problem before you come up with solutions. And you come up with different solutions as well, different dimensionality. So yes, amazing training.
And then, so you mentioned the early inspiration from your family and giving you, I'd say, quite structured advice. When you got to your early roles and were working on some pretty big projects there that you've just mentioned, were there some specific individuals that you look back and think they really helped shape me, or they really inspired me, or that was a challenging person to work with and that taught me something too? Tell me a little bit about the people that got you along your career path.
There was a CFO I worked with, and she's one of those rare CFOs who are females, because like 9 out of 10 CFOs I work for are male. But she was the one who helped me be a CFO, because I was sort of a controller for many years, over a decade, and the next step up was CFO. And she helped me get there because she helped me think pragmatically. Because I would go to her with a problem and I said, well, I've got solution A, B, and C. What do I choose? And she said, choose a solution that improves the profitability of the company and reduces regulatory hurdles. So it's amazing the way she thinks. She's all about making money and making my life easy. You know, you don't want to go through regulatory hurdles. And because of her thinking, I adopt that today in terms of problem solving. She's amazing.
Amazing.
And I wanted to also mention something else. So I was a CFO at DHL, and DHL is another very structured company because of the German ethos. And the way they simplify processes, they're all about continuous improvement. So if a process takes 10 steps, every year you're supposed to shave 20% off that. So from 10, you go to 8, you go to, 6. It is every year 20%. And they force everyone to think about simplification. So keep it simple. It's amazing because you can think of a process and think, why is it so unwieldy? And then you think of how to shortcut it and make it quicker. So they're all about efficiency and simplicity. And it's these experiences along the way that have driven me to be better as a CFO, I think.
Amazing. And it's great you mentioned DHL, because actually we have something called the Adam Smith Awards, and the Adam Smith Awards Asia within the Treasury Today group, which I'm sure you know well. And the team in Asia particularly have been so involved with that and always join our community discussions around best practice. So I really see them in action out in the industry, like helping advise everyone else on what they've seen and really being part of that kind of collaborative environment that I think financial leaders who I admire are. Like they're willing to give their time and their experience and their challenges to help the whole industry become better. So thank you for mentioning them. And then what about on a personal level, I guess? Is that something that you've worked on, how to kind of personally develop? Because there's obviously the technical skill sets and the kind of pragmatic approach, as you termed it there, that's necessary. But what about some of the kind of leadership skills that you had to focus on along the way?
So there are hard and there are soft skills. I'll do the hard ones or the technical because it's easier for me. The one thing that I had to develop along the way was to creatively problem solve. So the way that you're taught at school, at university, it's structured, but sometimes you're stuck in a silo. So you got to think around the box in terms of problem solving. And I find that as a CFO and certainly as a leader, you have to always creatively problem solve. There's no simple answer. And sometimes the answers are blurred as well. It's grey, it's not black and white.
Yeah.
So you have to have that ability. I think the second one is actually to convince others along the way. So when you present a proposal or a solution, you need to articulate it in a very simple manner such that even a layperson can understand. And that's how you get people to buy into your view. Even if they agree to disagree, at least they understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
To keep it simple. And then the other one is sort of managing upwards and downwards in terms of your bosses and your direct reports. It's all about, I think, not pushing people too hard. So, I mean, when I first became a manager like 20 years ago, I could be quite hard on people. And then you realize it's quite upsetting to people.
Yeah.
I've mellowed along the way and now I just sort of, okay, that's fine. So you have to just be a bit more compassionate, I think, and understanding.
I love that you said that. And I like the idea of creative problem solving, because I think I have like a particular style of approaching things and how I think I would like to be led. And I guess my failure when I started leading a company was to think that everybody is motivated the same. And so, for example, like no micromanaging at all, because I hate that and all these things. And then as you kind of manage more and more people, you realize that everybody's very different. Everyone's motivated in different ways. And some people are, as you say, like they're going to be crushed by certain feedback, whereas other people, that's what they need to thrive. So I think that creative problem solving is helpful even on the leadership side, because not every person, there's not one size fits all, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Is that something that you've experienced when you're leading teams and people?
It is. And I actually don't like hiring clones of myself. I like hiring people who have different skill sets in all aspects of what I want a team to be. So everyone that I hire must bring a skill that no one else has. Then that's how you create a very comprehensive team.
Absolutely. And then if we think about aspirations, because you have made it to what many people would term the top, the role that you have is a very aspirational one. When did you start to think, I would like to be a CFO? And do you think it's important to kind of have a carved out career aspiration, if you like, rather than a career path?
Yeah, so I'll start at the beginning. So when I was working for the accounting firms, the Big Four, obviously I wanted to be a partner, but they told me quite early in my career, I could only be a director, never a partner, because I may be good technically, but I didn't have the gift of the gab to bring in revenue, to sell, essentially. So I knew I had to move into industry and be an accountant and work my way up. So that's what I did as soon as I could. And then once I joined, I just wanted to climb to the top. It's not an easy climb. I mean, I was up to controller for about 20 odd years before I became CFO. So it's that jump from being a bean counter to becoming a business manager, managing a business,
Yeah.
And when you manage a business as a CFO, I only probably make use of my finance skills 20% of the time. The other 80% is HR, problem solving, building problems, insurance problems, claims problems. So you need to be like jack of all trades,
Yeah.
And you need to build the skill set. And actually, I managed to build quite a good skill set in actuarial science as well. So I was our chief actuary less in my previous job. I was the acting chief actuary. And even at DHL, I was actually the chief actuary there as well for the insurance captive. So I can sort of do accounting and and actuarial, although I don't have an actuarial qualification, but I understand the math because it's just difficult math, really.
Amazing. There's some commonalities there that were springing to my mind with two other people that I've spoken with for this series. So the first was Eric Ball, who was in one of our first episodes, and he said there are moments in your career when you need to be a specialist to get ahead, and then there's moments where you step up and then you have to become a generalist again. And that really reminded me of what you were saying about moving into the CFO, which is you move from being a bean counter to a business manager. And then Yang Zhu, I mean, she is now the CFO of the Straumann Group, and she has had some of the most broad experiences I think I've heard of it, even working in IT and HR as well as different finance functions. Do you think that kind of broad range of experiences serves you well when you step up to that really next level of CFO?
You may not necessarily get the experience, but you must know the intricacies of the technicalities involved. Like in IT, you must know a lot about data governance and data lineage, and security, all these sort of technical stuff. And also HR, you must know about the performance improvement plan route or the disciplinary plan route or the redundancy. You must know all these aspects because otherwise I don't think you would qualify as a CFO because you need to be generally an all-rounder.
Yeah. And also, I guess that gives you the skill set to then be able to communicate with multiple departments and value what they're bringing to the table and so on, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. So one of the things that I like to ask people is what was as they were expecting? So I guess you've touched on that, but what wasn't what you were expecting when you stepped into the CFO role? You meant like 20 years waiting to ascend to that title. When you got there, were there some things that you thought, oh, this is not what I was expecting at all?
Yes, there are. There are two things that I wasn't expecting. The first one is to approve payments. Every week I was given pages and pages of payments to approve it. This has been going on for the last 7 years. Because I've been a CFO at DHL, I've been a CFO at an insurance company, and now I'm a CFO at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre. And all three, I'm just approving payments non-stop. It's a simple job, but it's just onerous. It's a very admin role. The other thing is people come to you, ask you to sign all kinds of weird things.
Like what? Tell us.
Like a sales agreement with a client because the sales director is off sick or something, and then I've got to step in. All kinds of agreements, like agreement with the supplier because the procurement manager is off sick or something like that,
Yeah.
Very strange things.
And how do you see the kind of the function evolving? So you've been in your role for, I think it's more than 7 years now, right?
Yeah, a couple of years, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what's changing about the function of CFO, especially with the advent of new technology and so on?
Yeah, what I can tell you is about digitalization of processes. So a lot of the processes that we finance people do are very routine and they repeat every month.
Yeah.
And a lot of the data that they process come from a system. So you can get robots now or robotic process automation to just suck data from a system, process it because you process it based on a set of rules, right?
Yeah.
So it can just repeat those rules. So a lot of this processing, I would say 70 to 80% can be done by an RPA process. And then a human being will come and top and tail it with all kinds of judgmental numbers. So where the human beings come in is actually to estimate numbers, like an estimate of what the future sales are or estimate future expenses, because these are not tangible data. It's just your judgment. And that's where I think the accountant will move towards more judgmental areas and leave all the processing work to a robot. And I've seen it happen at DHL. And I've seen it happen also at another insurance company I worked for when I was a controller. They try to automate as many of the month-end processes as far as they can. Because it's quicker, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's also error-free.
And hopefully that then frees you up to use more of what makes you uniquely human in the role. What do you hope will change in kind of the time that you'll win back from automation of processes? What do you hope that will allow you to do in the future more of?
And to be a business partner. So I'll give you an example. I was working for an insurer in the UK that's also based out in Swansea. They were selling motor insurance and motorcycle insurance and tractors, agriculture, all kinds of things. And because we had extra time, we would look at the data and we'll see in the summer months, there are more motorcycle accidents.
Oh, wow.
Because people take the motorcycles out and they skid or whatever and they have accidents. So what would happen is we would every week give a trading report to the insurance underwriters, the people who price and sell. And as the claims climb, then they realize they should increase the prices as well. So every time we give them a report on claims, which gets really, really bad in the summer months, the prices keep climbing. And then by the time it comes to autumn and winter, when the claims fall because people don't take their bikes out anymore, their motorcycles out, then the prices would fall. So that's what we call dynamic pricing. We would help the business.
And on that front as well, what do you think, there are many CFO relationships that I would say have typified a company's growth. And there have been many relationships that have typified like a terrible dynamic in a company. I think the CFO dynamic is incredibly important, but also very unique from institution to institution. Tell me a little bit about how you see the significance of the role with the CEO, with the communication between the two.
Oh, the CFO is always viewed as the number two, if not the number three, after the chief sales officer, the one who brings in the. And generally, if the CEO either goes suddenly, normally it's the CFO that gets to step up as an interim. And whether that person succeeds depend very much on whether they can bring in business. Do you have the ability to be a salesperson? And if you're not, then unfortunately, it's not for you. And I think many CFOs don't have the ability to be salespeople because generally they are less talkative, probably, and maybe more of an introvert rather than an extrovert. So I think it takes a very unique CFO who likes talking and bringing in business to actually be a CEO.
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. It's something Eric again mentioned when we spoke. He's got a real gift with the gab and is quite a storyteller. And so he was brought into a startup as CFO. And so I think those moments are when they need the CFO often to be part of the pitches, right? When a company is growing rapidly at the beginning. So that's really interesting that you mentioned that. We talked about hard skills and soft skills. I think hard skills, there are easy ways to look at what you can learn, to acquire accreditations, to do courses, to do MBAs and so on. But soft skills can be a bit more enigmatic. And I think more and more of my work is around developing humans rather than financial skill sets. That is more and more what we talk about. We've never lived in such uncertain times when it comes to careers and organizations. But the one thing we can rely on is that investments in ourselves will pay off, hopefully. How do you go about thinking about soft skills? Is it something you've had to work on? Do you hire coaches? Do you go to different things? Like, what are some of the ways that you nourish that side of your development?
So I would recommend getting an executive coach. So what you would do is do a 365 feedback from people above you, same level and beneath you. Get them to give honest feedback about what you do well and what you don't do well. Give that feedback to your coach and tell your coach, help round off the edges because I want to be a CFO.
Yeah, amazing. And one of the things, I think that is great advice and it's something I've heard, but what are some of the things that we can develop to be able to hear that feedback? Because to be perfectly honest with you, when I think about getting that upwards, same level and below feedback, that makes me feel a bit stressed about what you might learn about yourself. So do you have any tips for developing resilience in like hearing things that we may not want to hear, which I think is how we get to be the best versions of ourselves, to be honest?
Yeah, I think you have to develop a thick skin. And don't take it personally at work because it's all about work. Yeah. And if someone you don't get along with or whatever, it's just all work related. Don't take it personally because at the end of the day, your job is not the be all and end all. It's your family because when you're in trouble, it's your family and your friends, not your work colleagues. So yeah, so just develop a thick skin, I would say.
Yeah, and is it something that you've sort of noticed more as you go up higher? Because they say, don't they, it's lonely at the top. And I think when you're CFO, it's often your job to not be especially liked at certain moments. So is that something that you've noticed more as you've gone up?
No, I wouldn't say so. I don't think I've alienated people. In fact, some of my former staff who meet me now, they realize I've mellowed. Because as a CFO, it's what we call materiality. So when I was a controller, I had the materiality threshold like £100. Anything that was £100 different, I would make them chase it down and reconcile it. For now, it's not £100. It's more like £1 million.
Yeah, sure.
It is within $1 million. Okay, that's fine. It's ballpark. That's fine. Leave it. So I've mellowed actually.
Amazing. And then looking forward, what advice would you offer people who are aspiring to reach different things? I mean, you talked about that great advice of getting into the big firms and ways that we can approach that. But what's your advice for those who look at you and think that's where I want to be one day?
I think don't work for a company for a long period of time. What you should do is maximize your ability in one company and then move on to another because otherwise you'll be sort of stagnated at one place. So keep moving as and when you move jobs, you should aspire to go the next level up each time.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there resources that you draw upon as a leader? Like, do you belong to any community groups? Do you have, I don't know, things that you read or like consuming that help you?
So I am an avid reader of the Financial Times. So I think that develops my knowledge of, everyday macroeconomic variables. I also belong to a club that talks about 30. They want 30% of the FTSE 100.
Oh, the 30% club. Yeah,
that's
sure.
It. Yeah, exactly. So I think I used to belong to that club as well a couple of years ago. So you get a lot of inspiration from female leaders. Yes,
they're amazing. In fact, Brenda Trinalden, who was very involved with the 30% club, spoke at our first ever Women in Treasury event quite a long time ago now, like about 12 years ago. And I really admire the work they're doing, and they've been very effective. But I think that those kind of community platforms, I'm just finishing today, I went to a founders talk, and every time I go to these talks, I feel like I come away with at least one more thing to add to your toolbox. And there's no end to how much wisdom you can gather from hearing about other people's journeys, right? And challenges.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is TED Talks. Just listen to a couple of relevant ones to polish up your soft skills, or develop more soft skills.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our Ask a CFO audience?
Yes, actually, there's one thing. Leverage your team members' strengths. So don't focus on their weak points, just leverage their strengths. And if someone is bad at doing things, move that task to someone else who can do it better. Because I think it's demotivating to just keep hammering on about someone's weaknesses.
I totally agree.
Yeah, play to their strengths.
That is a really great piece of advice. And also it allows, people have often said to me, people become what they kind of hear you say about them. So the more you tell someone, like, lean into what you're good at, the more they start to believe it. But as you say, like, when morale gets low is when we're constantly dealing with the things that we can't do very well. So I think that's great advice. So all remains for me to say is thank you so much. I am so grateful to you and to all of our other speakers. And just as you said, the wisdom of community, that's one of the things that I really hope Ask a CFO does, which is to inspire people to make more transparent a career path that's often quite hard to attain for many, and to make us have more representation of CFOs in the future, more women and more diverse talent, and we hope across the world. So thank you for being part of this, and keep in touch, and I look forward to seeing what you'll do next.
Thank you too.
Thank you so much to EeLain for joining us, for sharing her wisdom and experiences, and for being part of Ask a CFO. Thank you all of you for listening, and see you next time.